Well, hello there. I'm here with Mike Bentley. Now, Michael, you are a special person to me in the industry of golf because you're a researcher in the mechanics of golf and measurement, doing things by getting more and more precise measurements, and with that, a chance to build a golf swing with what I call good alignments.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here.
Michael, just give me five, buddy.
Thank you, sir.
Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you to tell us your story because you're a PGA professional. You played the tour for 5 years.
Yes.
On the main tour here.
Yes.
You work with some certain people, so I'll let you tell your story.
Okay.
But tell us the beginning. Sure. When you started playing golf. Go back to where'd you come from?
Yeah, so I was born in Napa, California, Northern Cal, and my father was a PGA professional.
About 2 hours north of San Francisco?
Correct.
That's for us guys in Australia.
Yeah, it's kind of famous for the wine country now.
Right.
Yeah, so I grew up there in Napa, so started playing golf when I could crawl, and again, my father was a PGA professional, so I was around golf my whole life. And my grandfather was a biomechanical engineer in the Navy, and then also got involved with mechanics, specifically to automobiles and speed shops. So we had a machine shop when I was very young. So I kind of had this world of here's mechanics and then also sport.
And when we talk about mechanics, we're talking about speed, racing, motocross, go-karts, and in the bigger cars. And you're in like a guy called Stevie Williams. You know him?
Yes, you bet. Yeah.
Caddied, very famous Kiwi caddy.
Correct.
Just written a book too, by the way, and a great book.
Yeah, so we're all gearheads. Yeah.
Yeah, he loves the speedway.
You bet.
And there's a few other guys on the tour.
Yes.
Anyway, you were doing that, but you fell into golf.
I did, yeah. So I took racing as long as I could. So I started really racing seriously when I was 9, and really stopped racing when I was about 18 years old. And then got the golf bug pretty heavy, so worked as hard as I could and was able to play well enough to get into a college scholarship. And that's why I played at Sacramento State. And then from Sacramento State, I tried to play the mini tours. Started, really working on my game, got serious about it. At that time, Southern California was kind of the hotbed for mini tours. So I moved myself down to Southern Cal and played as much as I could. And then started working on my game more seriously and found out that my mechanics were not that strong. But back then we had VHS cameras. That was the best we had. Yet in the mechanics world we had dynos and different things really measured to an infinite degree.
Yep.
It didn't make sense to me. So then we had also a team, a whole engineering team to build our race cars or our motorcycles. Yet in golf we were by ourselves with a VH camera. So there was a complete different world that these two would kind of bounce around.
The precision in golf instruction has been missing a lot, and then of course with that a lot of opinions come in.
Correct. Yeah, if we can't measure, then we can kind of create all kinds of different.
Oh yeah, mysteries and whatever. But you played in Australia.
I did. Yeah, I was lucky enough to travel to Australia. Played there, played in Asia, which was great. Learned completely different types of shots. Never even knew those types of shots were around other than what we saw on TV. So the Australians and the Asians had just wonderful short games that we were used to hitting everything high and flop, and now they were running drivers at 3 woods on the ground, which I knew nothing about that game.
Anyway, you came back to the States and you played the tour from 1991 to 95?
Yes. Yeah, I struggled along that way, so then I moved myself from Southern Cal to Florida to work with David Ledbetter. And so we would fly back and forth, but I was really not getting any better. In fact, I was getting worse. So I used to never see the left-hand side of the golf course. Now I see the left-hand and the right-hand side. As you know, you can't play when you're doing that.
But so you started working on your game with David Ledbetter and Gary Smith?
Yes.
And what was the result of that?
Yeah, so they would kind of restructured my whole game from the ground up, and they would ask me to do certain things that was much different than what I was doing. So I used to take the golf club very much on the outside. So I would go work with them 1 week and we get it. Now I'd come back and now I'm too far to the inside. So I travel again, then I'm back too far to the outside. So I'm like, wait a second. I've kind of seen this world back and forth. I'm not getting any better, and I'm spending a lot of money, and I'm not out of the tour. So I started building apparatus. So having the mechanical background, I'm like, all right, let me understand exactly what you want me to do, and I'll build this plane board or whatever it is, make sure I'm moving correctly to what you want me to do. So what we found out right away was, wait a second, one week we're inside, the next week we're outside. And Tom Watson comes in, now we're changing the putting stroke. So it used to be inside to inside, then it was inside to down line, straight back and straight through. Every week was a different theory.
And you had Dave Phelps come in the middle of that.
Exactly.
Said you have all these different length swings. And
yeah, we had Phil Ritson one week would say one thing, so it was like we had all this different information. So now we're like, wait a second, we really don't know, and we're not measuring. So everything is a guess, and the best
up
measure.
to 95.
Exactly. So then I said, okay, we had these labs in the racing world. Where are the labs in the medical golf world? There wasn't any. So I started searching for biomechanical labs and was lucky enough to work at Sentinel Hospital. So I parked myself there in the lab. So the first time we started measuring.
Sentinel, that's over here.
Yeah, it's in LA.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Dr. Joe, Marilyn Pink, really one of the first biomechanical labs out there. Got on the force plates, knew nothing about that. Started working with video-based systems, and we marker and then have to manually digitize, which used to take weeks to get this information.
And not that exactly.
Not that exact. So we had all kinds of error because it was manual digitizing. Yep.
And this meanwhile was going out to the rest of the world.
Exactly.
In a little bit here and there.
It was, yeah.
But at least moving in the correct direction towards cause and effect precision.
Yeah, so we were really trying to find out what were the forces that were creating the motion and how we change those forces. So that's what we started with. So then the goal was, well, we can't get the other professional athletes to come in and spend a week and get all hooked up. They're not going to do it. So we started grabbing as much data as we could. We said, all right, the goal now is how do we take this lab, what we currently have, and get it faster? How do we get the data quicker? So then we started working with electromagnetics. So electromagnetics started really in about 98. That data was great because we could get it right away. The problem was it was wired. So we went from Sentinel Hospital, again, which was great. The problem was it took too much time to grab that data. So then we said, how do we build this lab to get the data faster? So then we started working with Polhemus and Intersense working on electromagnetic. And
much more precise.
It was more precise. The data was faster. The problem was you had the wires. So now the individual could only stay right there, and I had the mass of these wires, which you don't normally swing the way you swing on the golf course. So we're like, this is great because it's faster. The problem is I got to get rid of the wires. So really in 2000, we said, all right, we're going to eliminate these wires. So we built the first wireless inertial sensor that we released, which is called K-Vest in 2002.
K-Vest, that's right.
That's right.
I bought the K-Vest from Graham Bolton.
Yes.
And we had a lot of fun testing that out down there.
Yeah, and now it's kind of an industry standard, and there's a lot of pros and coaches using the product. Again, it's great. The problem is it's still big. So the goal is how do we keep making it smaller? So working with all the different OEMs.
And more simple too.
More simple.
Yeah.
So really it was thanks to Apple and the automobile industry of being able to make this sensor much smaller.
Yeah.
And that's what the OEMs wanted. So how do I put it on the golf club? They didn't care too much about the body. They wanted to see what their golf club was doing. So then we released Enzo, which was how we measure the shaft. And now the shaft manufacturers could actually see what was going on with the shaft. They never saw that before, other than with a robot. The human body doesn't move like a robot does. There's certain elements that just are not there. So now we can measure the shaft, the golf club, the golfer with optical system. So that was first released really about 2005. Was Enzo.
This is really folks. This is the progression in building the science that can actually measure in the golf swing and the golf business.
Correct.
So that us as students of the game can actually get good data.
Correct.
And then for a chance, if you've got the right mechanical understanding of the mechanics of the swing, then you can adjust and fine tune your swing.
That's right. So it's that biofeedback. How do we get that loop as fast as we could? So we found great information about the golf club, great information about the golfer. Then we started really working on the ground. So how do we really take what we did back in the early 90s and get it more user-friendly? So we started using ground force patterns from the force plates, which was great. And then we said, well, I want to understand what's happening inside the shoe. So we use in-shoe systems, pressure mats now, which are really popular, outside the shoe, and then force plates.
You're basically with a pioneer to develop, which is the one that the V1 use.
Body track or Catalyst. Yeah.
There's quite a few of them now.
Yes.
But
It's getting popular, yeah. So it's great that we're seeing and looking at pressure mats.
And you were at the foundation of building that.
Well, one of the guys out there had a ton of help. So Marilyn Pink, Dr.
Yeah,
Job.
you had the organisation.
Exactly. And the Orthopedic Research Lab was really pushing it with Scott Banks and Chris Welch. He said Xenolink.
Yep.
So that was really the pioneers out there. So we started to understand in golf what was happening from the ground up, out to the golf club, and then we started looking at how do we start tracking the golf ball. So Swing Dynamics and some of the others were tracking the ball, which was great, and then TrackMan came along.
And Flight Scope.
Exactly, Flight Scope and some of the others. So
Flight Scope were actually the developer of the Doppler system in golf. So, and then TrackMan used Flight Scope. Now Flight Scope are really powered up.
Yes.
And of course they're linked with the Mind side now, which I've been fortunate enough with Graham Bolton to get, which is the Focus Band.
That's right.
And so now we're closing in the loop, aren't we?
Yes. Yeah, and I was very lucky to meet Jim Rimmy, who was the past president of PGA. Jim gave me my first really lab of my own up in Okemo. So we had the ground force data, we had the body data, the club data, and then we also had EEG. So we really started to look at what was happening with the whole system.
So now we're really getting into the cause and effect, the truth.
That's right.
Rather than what an opinion is.
Correct.
We're measuring precise weight distribution, weight shift.
Yep.
And so now we need to know is how to cause that so that it goes to the right numbers.
Correct. And now getting this information in a very simple expression that the golfer and the coach can understand. So we would bring guys into a chemo, had all this great information. I would be having fun showing all the graphs. I turn back around and everyone's asleep. You couldn't understand it. Exactly. Way too much information.
Just one misunderstood word, folks, is another thing. When you want to learn something, there's barriers to learning, and what we're talking about here, probably there'll be a lot of people going to sleep already. But
that's right.
Just one misunderstood word or concept, or too much information at once can just and it's not digested and understood.
Right.
Just buries you.
Exactly. So we had the information. Now is how do we express it? How do we get it in a user format that everyone can understand? So everyone would go to sleep and we'd show the graphs and the numbers. But as soon as we brought in video, everyone would pop up out of the chair. We're like, okay, we got something here. How do we use video along with the graphical information, the metrics, and how do we merge that together? And that was really the inception of Blast.
Blast. B-L-A-S. It's a blast, really.
Yes, it is.
Yes. That's why I'm here.
Thank you.
Because, I've been through the system with Xenolink, and while there was there were some good measurements, a lot of good measurements there. You couldn't integrate it and make it into how do you get a golfer to improve their technique so they get better numbers.
Correct. Yeah, so Xenolink was great. Again, it was great information. The problem is it took too long to get it to the individual. So, again, how do we close that loop, get it faster? So Chris and myself and many others worked really hard to keep making that information easier to use.
Yeah. So what's this Blast all about?
So Blast, like I said, come a long way. Where we used to put the wires in the body wasn't a lot of fun. So now we're able to take this little inertial sensor. So when we had K-Vest, it was about 64 grams. Now we're down to 7. So it's more powerful. It does everything that we need it to do, but it's 7 grams.
And hardly changes the balance in the club at all.
Yeah, and we can get it to a point where the counterweighting, you can make it 0.
Right.
Yeah, so now we can really put it on the body or on the golf club and find out that information that we need. And then the key now is to synchronize it with video to tell that story very easy to the golfer or to the coach.
Now, first of all, before we look at how it gets to the video, the precision, because a lot of this stuff, they say, well, how accurate are these range finders?
You bet.
And someone says plus or minus 2 yards. Well, that's you don't have plus or minus 2 degrees, do you?
No, we don't have that opportunity to be off by 2 degrees. So we got to be portions of a degree. So when we built Blast, it was what we call a tactical military grade sensor. So we had all the information from our optical system when we did Enzo, and that became the gold standard. So we had to make sure that this sensor could compete and get the same information that our Enzo system did. It took us a few years to get it to that point. So now we have the accuracy of our Enzo system, but yet it's in a very small package. In fact, this sensor, which is hard to believe, will outperform our optical system when we're looking at any kind of orientation or rotation.
So to what part of a degree will this is accurate?
Yeah, it's less than 1/10 of a degree.
Less than 1/10 of a degree. So
Correct.
if that translates into a 100-yard shot,
Yeah, so a golfer, like in putting, can maybe be up to a degree off.
And still hold it.
And still hold it at 10 feet, let's say.
At 10 feet?
Yeah.
So a tenth of a degree, they're going to hit the middle of the hole.
Exactly, yeah. And that's what we want, is to truly understand what the handle of the golf club's doing, the shaft of the golf club, the head of the golf club.
Yeah, and the performance.
Exactly.
Whether this head design works for me
Exactly.
or doesn't.
Yes.
Okay?
Yeah.
Whether this face
Exactly.
has a good performance.
Yep.
So now a golfer can get fit with the right equipment.
Correct.
So, and that was a big learning curve for me when I was first introduced to Henry Griffiths, because they were really truly the first company that came along for the general public to actually build a proper set of clubs.
Yes.
And get the right fitting in the hands of the person. So now this allows us in a simulator to actually fit accurately.
Correct. Yeah, we can see the change. If I want to change the weight, counterweight, shaft, head, grip, whatever it is, and we can see those changes in those individuals. And really tune that golf club to that golfer.
Yeah, so it gets a very precise club fitting.
Yes.
So you can tell the difference between one putter and another, or one driver.
Correct.
Or a wedge, how much spin it gets.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so the tour players will take it, out on the range, and they'll see what they do in the range or in the lab, and it's different when what they do out on the golf course. So now we can show that difference of one club versus another out on the golf course, out in competition.
When they put their real swing on.
Exactly.
Yeah. So that's fantastic. So this is a measuring tool. What's the little thing down on the ground there?
Yeah, so the goal was how fast can we get the information to the golfer. So the sensor will travel that information to the iOS device or Android device. So now it's right on the application.
And this looks like this is a pretty good sized phone, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a 6S.
It's the big iPhone 6S.
Yes.
240 frames a second.
It's amazing. Yeah.
The only thing is the optics on this, it distorts the shaft, doesn't it?
It does, yeah. So the way it digitizes from top to bottom, you have to make sure you have to get the proper lighting. If you get the proper lighting, it won't give you that distortion.
Really?
Yeah. But it's, again, you have to understand the tricks of it, and also the way that Apple uses that camera to make sure it doesn't downgrade itself, change that shaft.
Yeah, the other thing is, a lot of people use this outside, so they've got sun lighting.
Correct.
And that still bows the shaft. But you can see a lot. It still gives you the right measurement.
It does.
And the timing of the swing.
Exactly. And that's what we found is kind of, again, all this research, at the core of it, what we found with the best players in the world, they control time. Doesn't matter the shot on the golf course, they control time very well.
Tempo.
Yeah. So
Tempo,
now,
rhythm,
exactly.
Balance, and tempo. So you got the force place, you found the balance.
Yep.
The rhythm, the rate of rotation of the outside to the component parts going back to the inner center.
Yeah, so now we
And
can
the
look at
tempo.
those patterns and then create what those timing signatures or tempo signatures are and understand where they are on the golf course, in the lab, and in competition.
And so basically a golfer can find out their own best tempo.
Correct.
And then practice and get feedback and get the feel.
Exactly.
Because you've got to translate that into a feeling.
Exactly.
Because you can't be thinking.
No.
That's the problem with numbers.
Exactly, it is. So it's understanding those metrics to understand the feel. How does the feel tie to those metrics? And that feeling changes from day to day, week to week. So what the best players in the world do is they calibrate themselves. In the hotel room, they'll be making putts. We can watch them in the cloud that they're training. When they get to the golf course, they're calibrating again. They go out in a practice round, they calibrate again. So what do they feel like that week and day to day as they work through the competition? So they're getting really, really spot on. Just like tuning a car, now we know exactly where I am that week.
And on top of that, now we have the mind measuring devices that are connecting up this, so that you can know what brainwave is exactly the best to create
right.
that.
So exactly. So if your frequency, let's say, is a 10, what happens to your patterns when you move it to a 30? It's a different pattern. So now understanding how do I change my thought process, my data acquisition, my target acquisition to change these patterns of timing.
So that then really gets golf. You've got to play out of your mind, but you've got to go through it.
That's right.
As a coach now, see. So when amateurs look at this, they will don't freak out, because now with specialised training, coaches can be trained to make it simple and just go, okay, I want you just to do this little bit of adjustment with your mechanics.
Correct.
Do a little, get your rhythm through your waggle or your tap, forward press. So you, as a coach, you can train someone to get very connected to their right numbers.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so like you said, this foam can actually sit in the golf bag. There's a training that the golfer is doing. The sensor can grab all that information, and now I just go play the game, work on those drills that we're working on, work on that competition drills that we're working on, and then see the data later, or I can see it in real time.
Yeah. The other thing is now, are you using sound? Are you using
We are. Yeah, so the
sound?
auditory feedback. So we have the visual feedback, the auditory feedback to understand what I'm doing.
So they can be sitting in the bag, and
You bet.
when the sound's on,
Yep.
they know they're right. If the sound
Right.
goes off, they got to go back off and find the sound.
Yeah, so we kind of have the Siri coach. She'll tell you what you're doing.
Siri, okay.
Yes, yes.
Fantastic.
Thank you. Appreciate the time.
I appreciate your time, and going forward, the nice thing about this device, there's lots of these devices. You certainly run up a pretty big bank bill. You have to go around and buy them all, but the magic thing about this, with the app and this, what does it cost a golfer?
Yeah, so in the United States, it's $150 retail.
US.
Yes.
150, that's about 220 Australian. Okay. It's got to convert.
That's right.
Okay. But still really inexpensive for for an amateur to have this to practice with.
Yes.
And of course, you can, from Croker Golf System, our website.com, you'll be able to, we'll certainly carry this. But
Correct.
there's plenty of information up on the internet. Your company's
Lastmotion.com.
lastmotion.com. Fantastic. And where are you located?
We're in Carlsbad, California, kind of in the hotbed there of golf.
So you moved to the center of rotation.
We did. You bet. Yep.
Well, again, thanks very much,
Thanks,
Michael.
Peter. I sure
And,
appreciate the time.
Appreciate your journey in the industry.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.